Publishers Association's Let It Be Known. It is Wednesday, November 2nd, 2022. This morning, we go around the country visiting with some of our publishers to talk about headlines affecting their communities. In Omaha, Nebraska, from the Star, we have Terri Sanders. In Dallas, we welcome Cheryl Smith from the Texas Metro News. And joining us also from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the one and only publisher of the West Side Gazette, Mr. Bobby Henry. Good morning.
Good morning, you all, and I'm glad to be here. My first time back in a long time, and I'm late. Hey, classmate.
Late for class.
How are you?
What's up over there? And is that the home of Malcolm X? What's happening?
You on mute, home of Malcolm X?
I'm on mute?
No, Terri is on mute.
We are.
There you are.
Hey, Terri.
Hey, home of Malcolm X. It's funny you mentioned that because this week we have the Life and Times of Malcolm X in opera.
Oh, wow. That would be nice.
Friday and Sunday. And it is only touring 5 cities. And Omaha is one of the cities because he was born here. I saw it in Detroit back in May. It is phenomenal.
Wow. What, you know the 5 cities?
Oh, you would ask me that.
I would.
Seattle, Seattle, Omaha, Detroit, Chicago, and maybe New York.
Okay. Wow. Terri, you should have brought us out to Omaha for that one.
Well, you know what? I should have. I should have. And what's interesting is the gentleman that wrote it, he wrote this years ago. It showed on New York stage, and then it, I guess, what you call go to sleep. And he brought it back, modernized it, and it's a gentleman, his 2 cousins.
Okay. Wow. So it's the opera, a Malcolm X opera. That should be really interesting.
The Life and Times of Malcolm X. And of course, you know, Omaha is not the plethora of African-American people.
Right.
And everybody I know, I say to them, so are you going to the opera? Huh? And then I start to educate. They've had several conversations at one of the local theaters. One was last Tuesday. There'll be another one, a follow-up next week. One of the singers is doing a master class. There are a lot of things going on to go with it. Is anyone familiar with Jeffrey Pope?
Jeffrey Pope sounds familiar.
Jeff Pope. He is coming to do a couple workshops. Malcolm X and the Power of Media.
Okay.
So that should be interesting. That is on Saturday morning. And then there's another, why Malcolm X is still relevant is Saturday afternoon, because in opera, they take off a day in between.
Okay. Wow.
So they won't be doing Friday, Saturday, Sunday. They're doing Friday, and then they're doing Sunday afternoon.
Okay, so with all that Malcolm X talk, did you hear about just the other day, the 2 men who was falsely accused of killing Malcolm X got a $25 million settlement?
They sure did. That is in my publisher's pen. That's on the front page this week. And I thought that was interesting. The fact that, well, that Malcolm X is here this weekend, and then that happened, and one of the persons had died, but they did get their money.
Which doesn't begin to compensate for all those years.
For the time that they lost, that they lost as a father, a brother, a nephew, a grandfather.
And the stigma of being accused of one of the most heinous crimes in history.
Right.
And you have to ask, how much is a life worth? How much?
A lot more than that.
Yes, and what happened, and then also what happens in prison is interesting because someone who went to prison told me, you know how you say what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, that actually that phrase was coined in the belly of the beast, because there are a lot of things that go on that people never want folks to know when they get out.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
They don't
sure.
want you to know that they were sexually abused. They don't know that they were the sexual abuser. Just a lot of things happen. And so, when we look at that and you say, what happens when Mia Abu-Jamal has been in prison for decades and on death row. And some people, he's talked about how when he was able to get his writings out, just about how torturous that could be. And the thing about it is some of the most vicious people in society are some of these prison guards because they treat inmates like animals. And the bad thing about it is that some of those animals get out, and what do you expect them to be like if you treated them like animals all their lives? And what about those prison guards? And there have been studies showing a lot of them are violent at home. They're alcoholics. And then in certain places they are the bubbas of the world, and that's even worse.
When you say bubbas, explain to our audience.
Texas term.
Okay, when I'm talking about bubbas, I'm talking about, because I do know some bubbas who look like you, Stacy, and you, Bobby, but I'm talking about the bubbas who
I've
are,
never been called Bubba before.
and I'm talking about the ones who low IQ, low intelligence, the ones who were quick to become members of the Klan.
Right.
That's who I'm talking about. Uneducated and dangerous as hell when you give them
Herschel Walker, Clarence Thomas.
okay, when you give them a position or you give them a gun and a badge.
Yeah.
And that's usually who they are. Bubbas are the ones that get those jobs.
Yes.
You talk about people being incarcerated. There's a man who just celebrated his 78th birthday here in Nebraska, and he was convicted 52 years ago of participating in a bombing that resulted in a police officer dying. He and another man. The other man died in prison. And this man's name is David Poindexter, and they are trying to get him out on parole, and they won't even hear his case. But he didn't do it. And back then, they were Black Panthers. And so you know what that means in the 60s. And that was the beginning of the devastation of the Black neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Here, the uprisings, not riots, uprisings.
Well, I'm going to segue to Malcolm X's contemporary, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Bobby, we did a story about this, and this was trending. It's still kind of trending. In one of Dr. King's last acts of generosity, he and his wife, Coretta, paid the hospital bill. Now, they didn't notice at the time who this child was going to turn out to be. They paid the hospital bill for the parents of superstar Academy Award winning actress Julia Roberts. It's a little known fact that recently surfaced. And where else? In a social media post. It got lost in an interview she did with Julia Roberts did with Gayle King. And of course, social media is undefeated, right? So this was just revisited just a couple of days ago. Julia Roberts had turned 55, and she said, my parents had a theater school in Atlanta called the Actors and Writers Workshop. And one day, Coretta Scott King called my mother and asked if her kids could be part of the school because they were having a hard time finding a place that would accept her kids. So, of course, Julia Roberts' mother, she said, sure. And that began a friendship between the King family and Julia Roberts' parents, Walter and Betty Lou Roberts. That led to the Kings paying for the birth of the woman who would become an international star. She said, Julia Roberts said, they helped us out of a jam. She says she has never and will never forget that. I think we lost Bobby again. I wanted to engage Mr. Florida on that, but he's dropped off. But I thought it was an interesting thing, Terri and Cheryl. And this happened. Julia was born in October of '67, so pretty much about 6 months before Dr. King's assassination.
Right.
I saw that and I thought, wow, you never know what humble beginnings people have. And many times people won't even tell that kind of story.
Yeah, and that's the thing that makes me think of, what do you do when you have that type of information? What does it make you do? How does it make you live your life? And have
Right.
we seen evidence of that with Miss Roberts?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Someone wrote on Twitter, "It's the ultimate civil rights flex." So,
It is. It is.
but you're
I
right, Cheryl. How, I can't say that. I know too much about Julia Roberts' personal life, but what I will say is, and this is coming from a vision in an ear that wasn't really looking for it from her, but I haven't really noticed any misgivings or or necessarily being a vocal ally. So I don't know.
mm-mm.
Yeah.
We'll have to look into that.
Well, and, see, and the
This is,
thing about it is, if we have to look, and there are things, people can do
Yeah.
things with their money and everything like that. But there is sometimes, now is the time where you need folks to be like seriously vocal. There's so many issues, so much to speak out on. I'm just, you know, I'm wondering if her parents would have been more vocal. I don't know what her parents did, but to come out with it now, I'm like, why?
mm-hmm.
And what was the significance of it? And again, like, where are the receipts that at some point in time you have paid it forward?
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. That's
Well,
true.
again, this was something that Bernice King said she knew about it all the while, and it wasn't something that they publicized for whatever reason. Jennifer Keys writes in, Julia Roberts' family benefited from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's generosity when he and his wife paid maternity hospital bills. Wow. Whoa. Yeah. And David Youngblood says she has long said the Kings were impactful in her life. So, at least David has recognized that. And, again, you can't judge a book by its cover. Otherwise, Bobby would not be included in this conversation, right?
I'm telling you, man. Don't. And I apologize. I guess because I'm gonna tell you. Well, what's going on is outside of our office. They're doing some construction. I mean, some major construction. Gentrification is here in Broward County.
So when y'all were classmates, these were the excuses he gave for being late.
Oh, this is.
They
Don't say,
loved him so much he didn't have to say anything. They were so glad to have him present.
come on, come on, come on. Now, okay. Where are we on the show so I can comment?
I got a question.
Sure.
What about Elon Musk buying up Twitter?
Well,
Are y'all tweeters? I mean, I am.
well,
Is it
that
black?
you
Is
know
it
what?
black Twitter?
No, he bought the whole
Se-
Twitter. He didn't just
several,
buy the black part.
yeah, and we're probably going to discuss that on another show, but
Oh, okay.
I'll leave it.
Call me back.
I'll yeah. David Youngblood says he's deleted the app, and more and more folks are doing that.
Yeah.
Celebrities are starting to leave in droves, and he made the announcement too that he was going to start charging for the blue check mark.
Oh, no, never mind. I'll be deleting mine too.
You leaving Twitter too?
Yeah.
Where we going? We got to go somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Well,
Hey,
there's an app, that a black owned app, and I'll get the name for you because I just signed up for it. And yes,
It
they're
is.
going. There we go. Just like we do with the black press, we're going to have the people who, until somebody white validates it, we're going to stay away from it. But why don't we start validating our own self?
Yeah.
I know that, I have not wanted the blue check. I have not tried to get it. I've had people come and work for me and say, well, you just got to have it and everything. But more of my validation comes from the brother and sister on the street who read my
Yeah.
page. The ones
Yeah.
who that's where I'm
Yeah.
getting the validation from. I'm not trying to get it from someone who manipulates our information to make money off of me.
Right.
Okay. Let me say this. If I can say this, did we congratulate Cheryl for her award that she received this past weekend at FAMU's homecoming?
No,
do
but
that?
tell us about it, Bobby Henry.
Okay. Well, I would be glad to. Since Cheryl so happily regurgitated my presence in her class at FAMU in the journalism department, one of our famed professors, Miss Thelma T. Gorm, who was very instrumental in establishing that journalism department at FAMU. Cheryl Smith of the Metro News media platform received the Thelma T. Gorm Award for all that she has done for FAMU and what she's doing in her home state of Texas. So congratulations to my classmate, Cheryl Smith, for receiving my fiance's award. I love Thelma Gorm. So congratulations.
And she, thank you so much. And she loved him. And so that's why when he walked into the class, we had to all stand and applaud.
Wow. Okay, so wait. So the real question, Cheryl, is how does he have a wife and a fiance? But I guess that's for another show, maybe Jerry Springer.
Well, Ms. Gorm has gone on transition. She has her heavenly ink well with her pen filled, so she's in heaven looking down on us. But back to writing our narrative. That's the responsibility of the Black press, of which we should take seriously, and telling our own stories and chronicling our own history. I think the African proverb says, if the lion doesn't write, then the hunter will always have the victory.
Right.
So I like that. We need to do that, and especially in times like this, with all the disenfranchisement that's coming from both sides of the parties, as well as people who look like us in the parties, who have created this chasm, this rift, if you will, between those who want to vote, those who are uncertain about voting, and the Gen X, of which 42% say they ain't gonna vote. So we got a serious problem, and that's where we come in as the Black press with our pen and other platforms of pleading our own cause and telling the truth about what is transpiring here in this country. So
Bobby, you and Cheryl are in states that people are closely watching in the election. Let's start with you, and we'll ask Cheryl the same thing about Texas. How are things looking? I know early voting got underway, and millions of people have already voted. How are things looking down in Florida?
And I don't like saying this, but the truth will set us free. It's not as we would hope to see at this point, the turnout of Black voters coming out to vote. I think
we lost Bobby a minute.
Construction.
Yeah, construction's going on there. All right, Cheryl. Well, let's go to you. Texas. What is early voting looking like?
Pretty much the same. And I know I voted on day 2. And because I knew I was going to be leaving to go to FAMU's homecoming, and I just don't leave. I know there are folks who say they want to vote on election day, but everybody's not going to make it to election day. And so I need to make sure that I got mine in. And I just want to talk for a quick minute about folks who are on the ballot, because you know what? I'm looking at people who I am voting for, and they asked for my vote, but I'm also looking like I asked for them to advertise, and they didn't. And so my vote is like, the same as, your ad. And I'm just saying, I'm looking at people.
They're not voting for you by not advertising.
Exactly. Right. Exactly. And so I asked the person, I think on day 2 at the polling place where I was at downtown Dallas, there were on the Dallas College campus, there were less than 300 who had voted by day 2 at 8 in the morning. And it was very disheartening for me. And I went by there yesterday, totally empty. Now, I will tell you, there's a state senator, Royce West, who is been in office since the early 90s. And he actually started using his money. He had meetings with the NAACP, the Dallas County Democratic Party, and me, the Black press. And we have other cohorts in the city, but I was the only Black press there. And he talked about tactics. What could you do to get people out, to get these Gen Zers you were talking about, Terry, out to vote. And so he finally came up, he started offering grants. And he he started a voter awareness precinct chair program. And he has precinct chairs where he's giving grants to them to create and fund creative ideas to increase voter turnout. So one of the precinct chairs is set up where they are providing transportation to high school students to the polls. Now there are some the polls are right there on their campus, so they don't need it. But just having people be enlightened, and I think there's something, that we really need to understand, and you don't hear about it. Just like we may not have heard about Julia Roberts and what she was doing, if she's done anything or said anything profound, prolific, for the edification and the liberation of our people. That before he died, Tupac Shakur was participating in voter education and registration drives.
Right.
And that's not a part that people wanted to show him doing. And I keep saying we have to get people who folks will listen to us. They listen to us when they're maybe 1 year old, and then they may come back and listen to us when we're almost 100 years old. But the in between, sometimes we lose the folks. I could bring Terry you to my house, and you could tell these people something I've been telling them every day for
Right.
300 days straight, and you'll say it and they'll look at you like they heard it for the first time, and like a light went off in their head. We have to get people who speak to them and not at them, and ask them what's important to them. But the danger of it all is that we don't have time. The implications of this election now, and Bobby has not come back yet, but I think I was in Florida. And at Florida's homecoming, I know that Congresswoman Val Demings was there.
Mhm.
And I wish, and there were a number of candidates who were there. And we're talking about two key states. Could you just begin to imagine what would happen if Stacey Abrams, Senator Warnock, Chris, Demings, Beto O'Rourke, and there's one more I'm trying to think of in Texas. If they won, what it would do to this country?
It would change it.
They can win. They can win. The votes are out there. The suppressors are out there also, but they could actually win. I was watching Herschel Walker speak the other day, and the guy standing behind him.
That's all you can do is watch. You can't listen.
Yeah, was looking like, what did he didn't know what was going to come out of his mouth, but the travesty of it all is, and like we look back and talk about what our ancestors did. Gosh darn it, what are our descendants going to look back and say, what did we do? Some of the voting that we are letting go, and they're going.
Well, Cheryl, Daniela Pierre, Terry also brought up this. She writes in the chat, 3 former Proud Boys were hired as poll workers in Miami, and we know stuff like that is going on not just in Miami. There's armed guards in certain polling sites. This is all part of trying to discourage folks, and we
why don't they ever come to me? Why don't I ever get to have fun like that? Why don't one of them ever?
You better not, because you'll be at the bottom of the jail.
I wish it would.
But
that's what's happened. But there are people who are terrorized. You look at folks when they set up the polling places in courthouses, and folks, everything from having child support issues or whatever, and they don't want to go near a police precinct. These are all tactics that will keep people from going to vote.
Isn't that white privilege?
Oh, Lord.
Exercising those tactics. We talked about Julia Roberts, and so I Googled. I'm learning. And it says that in 2020, she verified on an Instagram, calling out the privilege as a white person to do the things that Black people have come into contact with authorities over, including bird watching, playing loud music, or having a cell phone. Things that we get in trouble for that they don't. And that's white privilege and the travesty of that. And when you talk about those poll workers, that's white privilege. We better not go to the polls standing around talking any kind of anything. We can't do that. And where I live in middle America, in the smack dab middle of the United States, you know, sometimes I am envious of my fellow Black journalists because y'all got juice. Y'all got juice to
I
report.
heard that.
You got people doing stuff. And even though our paper is a good newspaper and we, you know, we report on that, we have some people that write commentary that tell us about the bad judges. Don't vote for this judge and that judge. And a man actually ran an ad. He said, I said, yeah, because you're paying for it. And I'm going to put down there that you said it. I'll take it. I will
Listen,
take it.
so before we wrap up, I have to throw this out there because we've been following the Supreme Court's affirmative action case,
Oh.
and but what the part, as they say, that part, Judge Jackson and her discussion, I guess, with the lawyer for this entity that's bringing this, trying to end affirmative action in the college admissions at Harvard and University of North Carolina. She
Right.
says, the lawyer, she says, and I'm going to read what she says. This is a brief of what she said, and you guys can briefly respond. It says, she says, you keep saying that you object to the use of race standing alone. This is what she is telling and deciding which applicants to admit. Of course, she's the first Black female justice. She says, but as I read the record and understand their process, it's never standing alone, that it's in the context of all the other factors. There are 40 factors about all sorts of things that the admissions office is looking at, and you haven't demonstrated or shown one situation in which they all look at is race. I mean, you talk about breaking it down, and she broke this lawyer down.
Yeah.
Yet though, her colleagues on that Supreme Court are going to go against her, and they're going to eliminate this affirmative action in the on you know in the college admissions.
So
And all their athletes need to leave the school. All their athletes need to leave the school. And you know, when do we stand up for things that we believe in? All the athletes need to leave, all the scholars need to leave, and find a place where it's time for people to make a stand.
I agree.
That's true.
as he walks through the construction, he says,
I'm telling you, man, I agree. I had to come back. This is so disheartening for me to experience this on this great conversation. Stacey, you and Greg got to do this up again when I'm in a position where I can really be heard. There's a lot that needs to be said. And Cheryl, you're absolutely right. You know, if every Black athlete would leave, you know, that would send a message. You know?
Yeah,
well, David Youngblood says what the Supreme Court failed to say, and what Justice Jackson reiterated, is the fact that affirmative action is the remedy for the treatment Blacks have endured. And that point was, you know, he's right. That point, Justice Jackson did bring up and made it clear. And what you were saying about the athletes and the scholars, et cetera, is also a point that I've seen many others have brought up as well. I like what Austin Cooper said. He said, did Justice Uncle Thomas really say he does not know what diversity is? Justice Thomas did say that.
Yeah.
That's a direct
well, maybe he doesn't. That's part of the problem.
Yeah.
Bobby, you got to invite Justice Jackson down there to your office and have a sit down with him.
You know, this and Stacey, that is something that we need to consider. Those who are doing damage to us, to have a conversation with us. Now, I remember on one of your shows, there was a lot of debate or conversation about having Kanye on. Screw. Well, to those who are capable of having an intelligent conversation, for us to engage in that dialogue, to ask those hard questions and put them on the spot so people can actually see and hear the buffoonery. Oh, did I just make up a word? Did that sound?
No, that's a real word. That's a real word.
That's a real word.
Okay. For us to engage in that conversation. You know, y'all, and we know we're preaching to the choir right now, but we know we need to have these hardcore conversations. You know, there, and I always and saying I'm okay, y'all, and I need for you to understand this. What I'm about to say. Negroes are better at being white people than white people are when it comes to the injustices that are done to us.
Yeah.
You know, we have assimilated to all the way over to being like those who dislike us. Let me say it that way, as opposed to going in on it like I want to. I'll just do that.
So Nebraska is one of the 8 states that have banned racial preferences in university admissions and public employment. And we did that, not very proud, back in 2008.
At least you did it.
Well, yeah, but now we can't get, you know, little Susie can't get a seat. So I went to school just because she's little Susie.
Wow.
So imagine if that.
All the gains that we have made, all the gains, and Dick Gregory used to talk about this, about the gains that we have made. You know, even something as simple. He said, like if you fly on a plane and you see a middle-aged, heavyweight white flight attendant, you know, he had to make things comical, and he just that looks like she should have retired 20 years ago. She's there because of the civil rights movement. She's there because of people are there. White women have benefited significantly from affirmative action. And then, so consequently, the white household, which takes us full circle back to who? The white man.
There you go.
Have benefited from our struggles, and it's a travesty when we get in positions and we continue to out-white white folks.
That's what I'm saying, Cheryl. You know, and I would
white folks. I like that.
Okay, I would dare say this: that if white women want to really show their independence, then this election here it should be no question asked. But if they are again under the
how they voted for Trump, like how they voted for Trump, they wanted us to march with them and come to Washington and wear pink caps and hats and everything, and then they went home to their husbands and voted for Trump.
So they're talking at both sides of their necks.
Well, Bobby, just to FYI, when we had that Kanye conversation, I think it was pretty unanimous that, you know, sometimes some people don't deserve a platform, and certainly the Black Press's platform has been sacred for 195 years, and so let's just keep it that way.
And I can dig, you know, I mean, and you're right. I mean, there are some that don't deserve the platform, you know.
Well, if we didn't ask to give him a platform when he was dogging Black people, well, what do we give him one for now? Because he comes after others?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I thought it was interesting, Cheryl and Terry and Bobby, that he is now saying in his apology about George Floyd that he now knows how it feels to have a knee in his neck, and he's still way off base. He set himself up he set himself up so that these companies can strip some of that wealth from him, and he's losing all his money, and that is a knee in his neck to him. You still are way off base. George Floyd had a literal knee in his neck, suffocated him, and he died a brutal death. He didn't have, you know, the $1 billion that you claim you have, and he certainly didn't have the privilege. Listen, Kanye was filmed just yesterday at his kid's soccer game, and it was him. He's the only one there who looks like him, and he's yelling and arguing with this woman, the mother of another kid, and he storms off. And what was interesting is that you could tell by the reaction of all of those people who did not look like him. You could tell by the reaction that this is par for the course for those people.
Them people.
But what was that story, that book that was written, A Man Without a Country? He's alienating himself to be put on an island, and we all know what happens when that occurs. Mental illness is a serious thing, and it manifests itself in so many ways, and I think we're seeing it played out right before our very eyes.
And I think, let me put it this way, do you think that's only a part of the problem, that is not just his alleged mental health issues?
I think that
people have used and manipulated him and to their benefit.
Yeah.
And when when they have got what they need, what they want, and or where they need to be with him, then they could discard him. And it's very frustrating, because that's when people do tend to come back to us, and there are going to be those of us who forgive him, and then we start comparing which Negro do we take back? Do we take back? Do we take back Clarence? Do we take back Hershey?
Clarence don't want to come back.
OJ, do we take back? You know what? And the thing about it is, his wife should be indicted. A lot of things should be happening. They are not happening, because you want to know why?
Wait, whose wife we talking about? I missed
Clarence's
that.
Clarence Thomas.
Oh, Clarence's wife. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you said. And there's so many things we have to. Black people have backbone, has to be stronger, and the Democratic Party's backbone has to be stronger. Mm-hmm. And those blacks who are part of the Republican Party or other parties, their backs. It's time for some strong back people, because if not, like I say, our descendants are going to be talking about us, and they're going to say, what were those Negroes doing? What were they doing? Just like, and real quickly, I'll just say, I was telling a class yesterday, because out of like maybe 14 students, only one of them could write cursive. And I said, just think about where you came from. And you had people who couldn't write, who were, all they did was grunt. They showed them in caves and everything. And then we get to a point where you're educating and you're teaching how to write and teaching how to speak and teaching how to speak several languages and everything. And now with technology and everything, we're getting a less educated society out there, and they're back to grunting again. You speak to them, and they don't know how to write. They tell you they don't like to read. And so it's like, are we dumbing? Are they going to go back, 50, 100 years from now? Are they going to be back in caves because they don't know how to communicate with each other?
That's a pet peeve of mine, that cursive writing. I just think that's horrible.
But we're allowing this to happen. And I just say to those parents, stop speaking for your child. If your child is of a certain age, make them open their mouth and speak themselves. If you ever been with someone, you say, well, how old are they? And the mom will say, oh, she's 16. I'm like, can she not speak? But that's what we're doing. We're allowing them to dumb down. We're allowing them to be disrespectful. And we need to stop it. We need to act like how the people acted who were raising us.
It's like it's as if there was something wrong, as if our parents did us unjustly when they told us, you couldn't go outside at a particular time. You had to be in here to do this. You had to wash dishes. You had to iron your own clothes. You were taught some form of independency under direct supervision. Now we want to say, okay, well, I have the right to, I have the freedom of free speech. Ain't a doggone thing free. It comes with a cost. And a lot of us are not willing to pay the cost. So we resort to being lenient because we think, oh, it was too hard for my parents to do me like that. Man, if I told you some of the things my parents did to me,
They are
But
the,
look at the stellar people that we are,
yeah,
because those things we had to.
Mhm.
You had to talk. You had to do this. You had to do that. You
you
had
had to
rules.
say thank you. You had to send a
Yes,
thank you
Please,
card.
please,
yes.
please. And the other part is you had to put a handle on the name.
Mm.
A 20-year-old
Miss,
can't come up talking about Bobby so
right,
and so. No, Mr. Bobby.
right.
Our own children still do that, and their friends. Well, TD, I said, put a handle on my name. You call me Miss TD.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You
And
know,
they're like,
this is not new. Aristotle, I may be saying his name wrong, but back in 345 BC, he had there's a quote he said, and you can go look it up, when it talked about children and their rudeness, and that was back then. The same thing is
going on
now, you know. So there ain't nothing new.
Ain't nothing new under the
And it's
sun. It's just
cyclical, but we have too much. We have too much at stake. And for me, I just think about those great grandmas who save pennies to send their children to college, and now they get degrees, and they come up there with their children and say, "Well, college ain't for everybody. Well, it's laying on your couch for everybody. No, it ain't gonna kill them."
Yeah. Hey, Cheryl, now let's go back. Now remember this past weekend at homecoming, right? You know, there were some comments made amongst older people at, you know, that, well, they must not sell bras in Tallahassee. That was one thing. And then and then it was said, I said, well, I'm gonna go over here and tell this young lady, if your mother come up here, I'm sure you would go change your clothes. But somebody in the group said, because their mama is dressing like that too. So, you know, it's rough,
and
man.
Bobby, it's never advisable for you to tell a woman
To tell the truth.
tell the truth,
There
shame the
was,
devil.
Well,
there was a lot of skin,
Yeah.
and I know that I venture to say that they are young people today are so in tune with their bodies. I don't care what size it is. I don't care if you're looking at it and it looks unhealthy. They don't see it is unhealthy when they are obese. You know, and obesity is a problem in our communities. And I think that the sororities and fraternities and all organizations need to address it. The church needs to address it and stop acting like it is not a problem. Because if you are a size 20 when you are 14, if truth be told, if you know 20 years from now, 30 years from now, are you going to be a candidate for amputation and a number of other issues, you know, that you're going to have? We have to address it. Stop acting like it's body shaming. No, it's trying to make you have a life and a healthy life. We are obese, and these kids, it is not cute. You know, when I saw the first time I saw a stretch mark, it was on a woman who had 3 kids, and she was like about 18, and I had gone down to Florida, and it was a shock. But hell, you see these young girls at 10 and 11 with stretch marks.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
let me just leave it. Let me highlight this, and we'll leave it here. The Tia TV writes in on the chat today: parents are not home. We all are chasing the bag in education and forgetting the value of family foundation. We are all to blame. It's a discussion that we can have and go on and on with. And you know, it's not enough that can be said about it, but we certainly appreciate our fabulous publishers who I think they all going to be in St. Thomas in February for the NNPA's Midwinter Conference, where Dr.
I'll try.
received the Lifetime Achievement Award. Cheryl says she's going to try. Cheryl's on the board. Cheryl's got a first class ticket. Bobby, she's flying first class over there.
Right.
They putting her up in the penthouse. She's a board member.
Right. But Stacey, can I say this to try to roll this all together into the conversation topic of the day? You know, if a lot of people are putting emphasis on other things as it pertains to voting, you know, but our Black folk are concerned about economics, you know, a place to stay, and our health, you know, and we rarely hear people talk about that. It's like they're pandering to other people. You know, sure, we're concerned about the choice, the right, you know, the choice and pro-life or whatever. We're concerned about that. But the things that are affecting us the most, me the most, economics, you know, can I afford a place to stay, and health, you know, of which Cheryl was mentioning and talking about. So if I don't think we went too far off the topic.
No, not
So
at all.
true.
We are so yeah. Terry says so true. Terri Sanders of the Omaha Star, Cheryl Smith, Texas Metro News award-winning Cheryl Smith, Hall of Fame Cheryl Smith.
Yes.
She got it all. NABJ Hall of Fame, you name it. Cheryl has done it. We appreciate Cheryl for those reasons and a lot more. And we certainly appreciate our guy down in Florida who's holding it down all the time, Bobby Henry. Thanks so much from the West Side Gazette. Thank you all for joining the Black Press of America's Let It Be Known. We'll see you tomorrow.